dangerous storm system is coming to the United States over the next few days, and this will bring a ton of problems, including a risk for a severe weather outbreak, which includes damaging winds, large hail, tornadoes, and some tornadoes could even be strong. There will also be a major fire risk that comes out of this big storm system, and there's also a potential for a blizzard. So in today's forecast, we're going to break down everything that you need to know about this storm system that is coming to the United States. We'll begin with what's happening across the country today, and the good news for right now is that things are looking relatively quiet. Not really much happening right now in the Great Plains or along the East Coast. Really, the only area that has any activity is back over along the West Coast, where we are anticipating a lot of snow and rain today, and this storm is what's going to bring the threat for a severe weather outbreak on both Friday and Saturday in the Great Plains and even back into parts of the Midwest, the Ohio Valley, and the Southeast. Now let's talk more about the severe weather potential over the next few days, and we'll begin with today, which we actually have a slight risk of severe weather in place across parts of Oklahoma, Arkansas, Texas, and Louisiana, where we are expecting at least a couple of storms to fire off tonight that could produce some significant hail and even maybe an isolated tornado or two. Notice that the Storm Prediction Center has actually put in a hatched risk for large hail this evening, which does indicate that we could see a couple of storms that produce hail as large as the size of tennis balls. So make sure that you are protecting your vehicle. The tornado risk is conditional, but we may see an isolated tornado, and if for some reason there's a storm that looks like it's about to drop a tornado, we will be live later today, so make sure you are subscribed to the channel. This threat is mainly going to be from about I-35 and eastbound, but I really think this is the corridor where our greatest tornado risk is going to end up lying, which means the Dallas-Fort Worth area probably not going to see much of a tornado risk. I think it'll be more than anything if you see something, large hail. Now, as we go into Friday, we are talking about a very concerning setup. The risk of severe weather is literally massive. This is one of the biggest severe weather risk areas that you will ever see. We have a marginal risk that extends from almost central Minnesota back to the Gulf Coast. We now have an enhanced risk of severe weather in place, which now includes most of Illinois, Indiana, Kentucky, Tennessee, Mississippi, Alabama, Arkansas, Missouri, and as well as Iowa. And I do think that there is going to be room for an upgrade of severe weather down the road. I would not rule out a moderate risk of severe weather, but here's the thing. I think Friday is going to be a bit different than Saturday. I think on Friday we're going to be dealing with more of a Boeing segment of storms back over in the Midwest that'll produce damaging winds and embedded tornadoes in a line of thunderstorms. We may end up seeing a couple of discrete supercells initially, or even as we go into the overnight hours here across parts of the Midwest or back through the deep south, but it is a little bit more conditional right now. I think we're definitely talking more about a significant wind risk on Friday, but nonetheless, we're still talking about a potential for tornadoes. Now, Saturday has the potential to be a significant severe weather outbreak and even potentially a tornado outbreak. The Storm Prediction Center has already mentioned that there will likely be higher probabilities here for this risk of severe weather, which means a moderate risk and maybe even a high risk of severe weather are going to be in play. But let's talk more about what this exactly means. So right now we have an enhanced risk of severe weather, which again is a 3 out of 5 on the severe weather scale from the Gulf Coast back into Tennessee. We also have a slight risk that goes all the way back up into the Ohio Valley, where we could see some significant damaging winds, large hail, and the potential for a tornado outbreak exists, but that's mainly going to be a concern back over in the Dixie Alley, where we have a lot of wind shear in addition to quite a bit of instability and very high moisture content. It is setting up to be a dangerous day on Saturday, and the only thing that's really limiting this as of right now would be any sort of morning convection that we have or the storm mode, but nonetheless, I think we're going to be talking about discrete supercells and then even a line of thunderstorms that'll try to develop later in the afternoon into the evening hours, which could also pose the threat for some significant damaging winds. And the severe weather madness continues as we go into Sunday, where we do have a slight risk that goes from Pennsylvania back into Florida. Right now, this appears to be more of a damaging wind risk, but we also could see a few tornadoes. We'll be talking more in detail about this setup as we go into future forecasts.
We've got a very busy and potentially dangerous week of weather ahead. Something we've been watching. We've been through one severe weather outbreak already this season. And as we look ahead to all of the energy coming through, I think we need to be all eyes open and conversations beginning right now.
We're keeping a close eye on the eastern half of our country over the next 5 days for storms from Texas to the Carolinas. It all really starts this evening over the Rockies before the system slams across the plains, bringing a multitude of threats to millions of Americans. So what type of impacts will we see from tonight's storm, but also this weekend's storm? While you're looking at them, everything is on the board, even, yes, the threat for wildfire, fueled by the strong winds on the backside of this severe weather system. We will also impact parts of our country with flooding, hail, and yes, the threat of tornadoes. So here's the overview. We have powerful weather systems that have been hitting the West Coast. A big impact for our West Coast viewers, which most of which are at sleep right now. But as those weather systems hop over the Rockies, they take shape into a severe weather outbreak, really. We'll have a taste of it today, but the weather system that's going to be impacting the West Coast today will end up being a severe weather outbreak for a good chunk of America as we go into Friday, Saturday, and Sunday.
You see all the area that's highlighted in red on the backside of that. There is some cold air, enough for some snow, not a lot, but some, but also the winds will be a major concern. This takes us into Saturday and into Sunday, where the outlook is 3 out of 4 at this point for Friday and Saturday. And Britta, going into Sunday, we see that over portions of the Carolinas as well. As we continue to watch this, it's one of those weekends where you think about this. You've got to make sure you've got your plan in place Friday, Saturday, and Sunday with the progression of this moving through. Everything is on the table. Let's begin, because look at the storm threat for Friday. You talked about some areas all the way from Chicago, or south of Chicago, rather, portions of Illinois into Arkansas. And now for Saturday's threat, new information coming in from the Storm Prediction Center. New Orleans is now in that level 3 threat. Saturday or Sunday, you can see how it extends all the way into portions of the mid-Atlantic and into the southeast.
Yeah, they've pushed that level 3 zone a little bit farther to the south, closer to the I-10 corridor and the Gulf Coast. Now, this is the same weather system that we'll be tracking for 3 days. So as it progresses across the country, it drags that severe weather potential. Right now, this weather system is hitting the West Coast. It's producing a flood threat in Southern California. And as it hops over the Rockies, the jet stream is going to position itself in a way that increases the odds of severe weather. It's the optimal position for a jet stream to create an outbreak. So this is part of the recipe that we're looking at that is going to lead to the severe weather that really takes 3 days to cross from Texas all the way to the East Coast.
And how about this? There's plenty of energy to work with, plenty of moisture. It's coming with a ton of moisture off the Pacific. Then by the time it gets over the plains, starts to pump in the moisture, that warm moisture in from the Gulf. You've got the warm front in place, but also a dry line. And the dry line acts as a lifting mechanism. Oftentimes we'll watch with the dry line where the winds are converging, some lift, and with that lift we may get some isolated cells ahead of that, which sometimes are more dangerous because they gobble up all of the energy. They can produce some severe weather, including rotation. All of the ingredients, Britta, are in place. We've been talking about this. What do we need? Well, number one, rising air. We've got that with converging winds plus the jet stream, and then we've got some change in wind direction with elevation from the ground all the way up to 10,000 feet. Look at the southerly flow from the south, and then with right in that warm sector, you've got some strong winds coming in from the west-southwest, so almost perpendicular in some spots, and that's where you'll watch for these twisting thunderstorms.
We have plenty of storm energy.